The holographic chamber of the Galactic Concord's Central Assembly buzzed with bioluminescent chatter as representatives from a dozen worlds gathered for their monthly session. The envoy's skin shifted from pale blue to irritated amber as they gestured toward the empty space designated for Earth's representative. Once again, the humans failed to attend, the envoy's melodic voice carried across the chamber. 3 cycles now, and still no response to our diplomatic overtures. Perhaps it is time to classify them as a non-participatory species. A chorus of agreement rippled through the assembly, multifaceted eyes and sensory organs focusing on the vacant spot. The Skrath commander, observing from the shadows near the chamber's edge, clicked their mandibles in satisfaction. Their segmented tail twitched with anticipation. The Concord's dismissal of humanity would make their upcoming contract that much easier to justify. The primitive species shows no interest in galactic affairs, the commander buzzed through their translation device. Perhaps it is time they learned the consequences of isolation. Meanwhile, 67 light-years away, Parker stood in the colony's hidden bunker, his weathered hands clasped behind his back as he surveyed the tactical display. The underground facility hummed with activity, dozens of monitors showing the approaching Skrath fleet, their distinctive wedge-shaped vessels cutting through the void with predatory precision. "Cleo status report," he called out, his voice carrying that familiar gravelly edge that had once commanded respect on Earth's battlefields. "Fleet's ready, Parker." Cleo's voice crackled through the comm system from the main hangar. "All 1,000 birds are primed and waiting. The Skrath won't know what hit them." Parker rubbed his worn metal ring, feeling its familiar weight against his finger. The gesture had become automatic over the years, a touchstone in moments of stress. Through the bunker's reinforced viewport, he could see the colony's main settlement, dusty buildings where families went about their daily routines, unaware of the approaching threat. "Sir," a young technician called out, "the Skrath fleet just dropped out of hyperspace. They're broadcasting on all frequencies." The main screen flickered to life, revealing the imposing form of the Skrath commander. 8 feet of chitinous armor and clicking mandibles filled the display, multifaceted red eyes glinting with predatory confidence. "Humans of the outer colony," the commander's harsh voice buzzed through the speakers, "you have been deemed unsuitable for continued existence. Surrender now, and your deaths will be swift." Parker's hazel eyes narrowed to slits. Around the bunker, colonists who had been monitoring the situation tensed, fear flickering across their faces. The colony settler, a gruff man with calloused hands and a weathered face, stepped forward. "Parker, you sure about this fleet of yours? Because if you're wrong—" "I'm not wrong," Parker cut him off, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were about to unleash. He turned to the communications officer. "Open a channel to Hangar Bay 1. The screen switched to Cleo's workspace, where the engineer was making final adjustments to a control panel. Her dark skin glistened with sweat, and her braided hair was tied back in a tight knot. Her piercing brown eyes flickered with calculations as she worked. "Cleo, it's time," Parker said simply. She looked up, a quick smile flashing across her face. "Been waiting for this moment for 3 years. The Skrath want to play? Let's show them what human ingenuity looks like." Her fingers danced across the controls, and throughout the hidden hangars carved into the colony's mountainside, 1,000 warships began to power up. Each vessel was a testament to human adaptability. Sleek hulls built from salvaged alien materials, jury-rigged weapon systems that combined technologies from a dozen different species, and engines that hummed with a unique harmonic frequency. The Skrath commander's transmission continued, their tail lashing with impatience. "You have 1 standard time unit to comply. After that, we will begin systematic extermination." Parker walked to the primary command station, his movements deliberate and controlled. He activated the colony's external communication array and opened a channel to the Skrath fleet. When his image appeared on their screens, he stood with quiet authority, hands clasped behind his back. "Skrath Commander," he said, his voice carrying across the void. "You've made a critical error in your intelligence gathering." The commander's mandibles clicked dismissively. "And what error would that be? Primitive?" "You assumed we were defenseless." At Parker's signal, Cleo initiated the launch sequence. The mountainside seemed to erupt as camouflaged hangar doors slid open, revealing the massive underground complex that had been carved out over 3 years of secret construction. One by one, the human warships emerged from their hiding places, their hulls gleaming with an otherworldly sheen. The first ship to fully clear the hangar was the Defiance, Parker's personal command vessel. Its design was unlike anything in the known galaxy, angular and aggressive, with weapon ports that seemed to shift and adapt as the ship moved. The hull was a patchwork of materials, each section telling a story of salvage and innovation. "By the void," the Skrath commander hissed, their confidence wavering for the first time. "How many ships do they have?" The answer came as more vessels poured from the hidden hangars. Fighters, cruisers, and capital ships, each one unique. Each one a testament to human resourcefulness. The colony settler watched from the bunker's viewport, his skepticism melting away as he witnessed the impossible made real. 1,000, Parker said into the comm, his voice carrying a cold satisfaction. 1,000 warships, Commander, built from the wreckage of your previous raids, from abandoned Concord vessels, from every scrap of alien technology we could get our hands on. Cleo's voice crackled through the internal comm. "Fleet's fully deployed, Parker. All ships reporting ready for combat." The Skrath commander's red eyes flashed with rage and something that might have been fear. "Impossible. Our intelligence indicated you were a primitive species with no space-worthy vessels." "Your intelligence was wrong," Parker replied. "We've been watching, learning, adapting. While you and the Concord dismissed us as irrelevant, we've been preparing for this moment." The human fleet spread out in a defensive formation around the colony, their diverse designs creating a tapestry of controlled chaos. Each ship's weapon systems powered up with a different energy signature, making it impossible for the Skrath to predict their capabilities. "This is your only warning," Parker continued, his voice steady and implacable. "Leave our space or discover exactly how creative humans can be when protecting their home." The Skrath commander's tail lashed violently, and their mandibles clicked in rapid succession, a sign of extreme agitation. "You dare threaten the Skrath? We have conquered 100 worlds." "But you've never faced us," Parker said simply. He cut the transmission and turned to Cleo's image on the screen. "Launch the Defiance. It's time to show the galaxy what Earth has been building while they weren't looking." As the command ship powered up its engines, Parker felt the familiar weight of command settling on his shoulders. The ring on his finger seemed to pulse with warmth, reminding him of everything he'd lost and everything he now fought to protect. The Skrath fleet, initially confident in their numerical superiority, began to spread out in attack formation. But as they moved, their sensors struggled to lock onto the human vessels. The patchwork construction and diverse energy signatures created a sensory maze that their targeting systems couldn't penetrate. "Cleo," Parker spoke into his comm as he strapped himself into the command chair of the Defiance. "How are our birds performing?" "Like a symphony of beautiful chaos," she replied, her voice filled with pride. "Every system green, every weapon primed. The Skrath are about to learn that underestimating humanity is a fatal mistake." The Defiance cleared the hangar and took its position at the head of the human fleet. Around them, the 1,000 warships formed a wall of defiance between the Skrath and the colony. Each vessel was crewed by colonists who had spent years training for this moment, their faces grim with determination. "All ships, this is Parker," he broadcast to the fleet. "Today we show the galaxy that Earth may have missed every meeting, but we never stopped preparing. Today we prove that humanity deserves its place among the stars." The Skrath commander's final transmission crackled through the comm. "You have sealed your fate, humans. The Skrath do not yield." "Neither do we," Parker replied, and gave the order that would change everything. "All ships, weapons free, protect the colony." The void between the two fleets suddenly blazed with weapon fire as 1,000 human warships opened fire simultaneously, their diverse weapons creating a light show that could be seen from the colony's surface. The Skrath, expecting primitive resistance, found themselves facing technology they couldn't understand and tactics they couldn't predict. The first battle of humanity's galactic war had begun, and the Skrath were about to learn that the species they dismissed as primitive had been forged in the fires of 1,000 conflicts on a world that never knew peace. The colony's main hall buzzed with anxious voices as Parker strode through the dust-covered entrance, his boots echoing on the metal flooring. The space had been hastily converted from a storage facility when the settlement was established 3 years ago, and it still bore the marks of its industrial origins. Exposed support beams crisscrossed the ceiling, and the air carried the faint scent of machinery oil and human sweat. Nearly 200 colonists had gathered, their faces etched with worry and skepticism. The colony settler stood near the front, his broad shoulders tense, arms crossed over his chest. His weathered face bore the deep lines of someone who had spent years fighting against the harsh realities of frontier life. "Parker," the settler called out, his gravelly voice cutting through the murmur of conversations. "You'd better have answers. People are scared. They're talking about evacuation, about running before those Skrath get here." Parker walked to the makeshift podium, a salvaged cargo container that had been repurposed for community gatherings. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his hazel eyes scanning the crowd. The ring on his finger caught the harsh overhead lighting, a small glint of metal that somehow seemed to anchor him. "I know you're afraid," he began, his voice carrying easily through the hall. "I know this seems impossible. 1,000 enemy ships against our little colony, it should be suicide." "Should be?" a voice called out from the back. "Parker, they're going to wipe us out. We've got mining equipment and hope. They've got warships." Parker's expression didn't change, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "Do we? Do we really have just mining equipment?" He gestured to the side wall where a control panel had been installed. "Computer, display Project Sanctuary." The wall lit up with a holographic projection showing the colony's underground network. But instead of the storage and maintenance facilities the colonists expected, the display revealed something impossible. Vast hangar bays carved into the mountainside, each one housing sleek, deadly-looking spacecraft. The hall fell silent. The colony settler's arms dropped to his sides, and his scarred jaw worked soundlessly. Other colonists leaned forward, their eyes wide with disbelief. What is this?" a young woman in the front row whispered. "This is what we've been building for 3 years," Parker said, his voice steady. "While you were establishing farms and homes, my team was preparing for this day. We knew the galaxy saw us as weak, as primitive. We knew someone would eventually come to test that assumption." 1,000 ships? The colony settler's voice cracked slightly. "How? We barely have enough raw materials to keep the habitat domes running." Parker's slight smile was grim. "We've been salvaging. Every derelict ship that drifted through this system, every piece of alien technology we could get our hands on. Cleo and her team have been reverse engineering, adapting, improving." As if summoned by her name, Cleo's image appeared on the secondary display. She was in the primary hangar, her wiry frame dwarfed by the massive warship behind her. The Defiance towered over her, its hull a patchwork of different metals and materials that somehow formed a cohesive, menacing whole. "Parker's being modest," Cleo said, her voice carrying that familiar technical precision. "These aren't just salvage ships, they're something new, something the galaxy has never seen before." She gestured to the vessel behind her. "Human engineering doesn't follow the same patterns as alien technology. We're not bound by their assumptions about how things should work. Take this beauty. She's got shield generators from 3 different species, weapon systems that we've modified beyond recognition, and an AI core that we built from scratch." A middle-aged man in mining coveralls stood up. "But we're not soldiers. I can barely operate a plasma cutter without burning myself. How are we supposed to fight a space battle?" "You're not," Parker said simply. "The fleet is crewed by volunteers who've been training for this moment. Some are former military, like myself. Others are engineers, like Cleo. But all of them are people who understand what we're fighting for." The colony settler scratched his graying beard, his expression skeptical. "Training? When? I've been here since day 1, and I've never seen any military training." "The night shifts," Parker explained. "The equipment maintenance schedules. The geological surveys that took teams away for weeks at a time. We've been preparing, learning to operate these ships, running simulations. Cleo's image shifted as she walked closer to the camera. Want to see something really impressive? Computer, show them the weapon test from last month. The main display changed to show an asteroid field. A sleek human fighter, no bigger than a transport shuttle, approached a massive rock formation. Without warning, the ship's hull seemed to shimmer, and sections of it reconfigured themselves. What had been a simple craft transformed into something angular and predatory. Adaptive hull technology, Cleo explained, her voice filled with pride. The ship literally changes its configuration based on the tactical situation. Fighter mode, assault mode, even stealth mode. The Skrath have never seen anything like it. The fighter fired a beam of energy that carved through the asteroid like a knife through butter. The crowd gasped as the massive rock split apart, revealing the precision of the cut. "That's just one ship," Parker said. "We have variants of that technology on every vessel in the fleet. The Skrath think they're facing a primitive species. They're about to learn that human ingenuity has no limits." The colony settler took a step forward. "Parker, this is incredible. But why the secrecy? Why not tell us?" Parker's expression softened slightly. "Because I needed you to build a life here, to create something worth fighting for. If you'd known about the threat, about the preparations, you would have lived in fear instead of hope." A young mother holding a small child spoke up. "What about our families, our children? Are they safe?" "The colony has been designed with that in mind," Parker replied. "The residential areas are built into the mountain, with reinforced shelters that can withstand orbital bombardment. But it won't come to that. The Skrath won't get past our fleet." Cleo's image moved again, showing her working on a control panel. "Speaking of which, Parker, the Skrath just dropped out of hyperspace. They're broadcasting their surrender demand now." The main screen switched to show the imposing form of the Skrath commander. The creature's chitinous armor gleamed under the harsh lighting of their ship's bridge, and their multifaceted red eyes glinted with predatory confidence. "Humans of the outer colony," the commander's harsh voice buzzed through the translation device. "You have been deemed unsuitable for continued existence. Surrender now, and your deaths will be swift." The colonists instinctively drew closer together, fear rippling through the crowd, but Parker stood unmoved, his hands still clasped behind his back. "Computer, open a channel to the Skrath fleet," he said calmly. "Parker, what are you doing?" the colony settler hissed. "Showing them what happens when you underestimate humanity," Parker replied. His image appeared on the Skrath ship's main screen. The commander's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "So the primitive species has found its voice," the commander buzzed. "Do you surrender?" "No," Parker said simply, "but I'll give you the same offer you gave us. Leave now, and your deaths will be swift." The commander's tail lashed with anger. "You mock the Skrath? We have conquered 100 worlds." "And we're about to show you why Earth missed every meeting," Parker replied. "Computer, launch the fleet." The hall's displays lit up with images from the hangar bays. One by one, the hidden doors slid open, revealing the massive underground complex. The colonists watched in stunned silence as their salvation emerged from the mountain. 1,000 warships, each one unique, each one a testament to human adaptability. The Defiance led the formation, its patchwork hull somehow managing to look both improvised and intimidating. Behind it came cruisers with weapon arrays that shifted and reconfigured as they moved, fighters whose very shapes seemed to flow like liquid metal, and capital ships that bristled with technology from a dozen different species. "By the void," the Skrath commander hissed, their confidence wavering. "How many ships do they have?" 1,000, Parker said, his voice carrying a cold satisfaction. "Built from the wreckage of your previous raids, from abandoned Concord vessels, from every scrap of alien technology we could get our hands on." The colony settler stared at the display, his mouth hanging open. "Parker, you magnificent genius, you actually did it." "We did it," Parker corrected. "Every one of you contributed to this. Every mining operation that accidentally found alien materials, every transport run that brought back geological samples, every colonist who didn't ask too many questions when the night shift went long." Cleo's voice crackled through the comm. "Fleet's fully deployed, Parker. All ships reporting ready for combat." The Skrath commander's image flickered with rage. "Impossible. Our intelligence indicated you were a primitive species with no space-worthy vessels." "Your intelligence was wrong," Parker replied. "We've been watching, learning, adapting. While you and the Concord dismissed us as irrelevant, we've been preparing for this moment." The colonists watched as the human fleet spread out in a defensive formation around the colony. Each ship's weapon systems powered up with a different energy signature, creating a light show that painted the void in colors that had never been seen before. "This is your only warning," Parker continued. "Leave our space or discover exactly how creative humans can be when protecting their home." The Skrath commander's transmission cut out, and the hall erupted in cheers. The colony settler grabbed Parker's shoulder, his weathered face split by a wide grin. "You crazy fool," he said, "you actually pulled it off." But Parker's expression remained grim. "This is just the beginning. The Skrath won't back down from a challenge, and once the Concord hears about this, everything changes." He turned to address the crowd. "Return to your homes. Secure your families. The fleet will protect you, but I need you to be ready for anything." As the colonists filed out, chattering excitedly about the revelation, the colony settler remained behind. "Parker, how long have you known this day would come?" Parker rubbed his ring, the gesture automatic and comforting. "Since the day I decided to leave Earth. The galaxy is full of predators, and sheep don't survive long without becoming wolves." "And Cleo, how long has she been in on this?" "Since the beginning. She's the reason any of this worked. Human engineering, alien technology, and the stubborn refusal to accept that something can't be done." The colony settler nodded slowly. "What do you need from us?" "Trust," Parker said simply, "and the courage to stand up to a galaxy that's about to learn that humanity is done being dismissed." Through the hall's windows, they could see the fleet moving into position. The Skrath forces were forming their own battle line, but their movement seemed hesitant, uncertain. They had expected easy prey and found apex predators instead. "Parker," Cleo's voice came through the comm, "the Skrath are powering weapons. Looks like they're not taking our suggestion." Parker smiled grimly. "Then let's show them what Earth has been building while they weren't looking." The first battle of humanity's galactic war was about to begin, and the colonists who had lived in peaceful ignorance were about to discover that their quiet frontier world had been preparing for this moment all along. The void between the human colony and the Skrath fleet was filled with the deadly dance of predator and prey, but for the first time in their species' history, the Skrath weren't sure which role they played. The human fleet had arranged itself in a formation that defied conventional military doctrine. Instead of the rigid battle lines favored by most galactic powers, the 1,000 warships moved like a living organism, each vessel independent, yet part of a greater whole. Parker stood on the bridge of the Defiance, his weathered hands gripping the command rail as he studied the tactical display. The ship's interior was a testament to human ingenuity. Control stations cobbled together from half a dozen different alien technologies, displays that showed information in formats that would have been incomprehensible to their original designers, and an AI core that hummed with a distinctly human voice. "Cleo, what's our stealth profile?" he asked, his voice carrying the calm authority of someone who had commanded in desperate situations before. "Like ghosts in the machine," Cleo replied from the engineering station. Her fingers danced over controls that seemed to reconfigure themselves as she worked. "The Skrath sensors are trying to lock onto us, but our adaptive hulls are cycling through a dozen different energy signatures. They're getting readings, but they can't tell what's real and what's electronic noise." The main screen showed the asteroid field that hung between the two fleets, a maze of tumbling rock and metal debris that had been the result of some ancient cosmic collision. To the Skrath, it was an obstacle to be avoided or blasted through. To the humans, it was opportunity. "All ships, this is Parker," he broadcast to the fleet. "Execute Labyrinth Protocol. Use the field to your advantage." The human warships scattered like startled birds, but their movement was coordinated chaos. Each vessel took a different vector into the asteroid field, their adaptive hulls shifting color and texture to match the surrounding debris. Within minutes, the 1,000-ship fleet had vanished into the maze of rock and metal. The Skrath commander's voice crackled through the comm, their tone a mixture of confusion and growing anger. "Cowards! You hide among rocks like vermin!" Parker smiled grimly. "Computer, open a channel to the Skrath flagship." His image appeared on the enemy vessel's main screen. The Skrath commander's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. "We are not hiding," Parker said calmly. "We're hunting." He cut the transmission before the commander could respond. Around him, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, their training evident in every movement. These weren't career soldiers. They were colonists who had learned to fight because their lives depended on it. "Parker," Cleo's voice carried a note of excitement. "I'm reading massive energy buildups from the Skrath vessels. They're preparing to fire into the asteroid field." "Let them waste their ammunition on rocks," Parker replied. "What's the status of our positioning?" 60% of the fleet is in optimal ambush configuration, reported the tactical officer, a former mining engineer who had adapted to military thinking with surprising ease. "The rest are still maneuvering." Parker nodded. "Patience. The Skrath think in straight lines, we think in curves." The asteroid field erupted in violence as the Skrath fleet opened fire. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes lanced through the void, pulverizing ancient rock and creating new debris clouds. The display showed the enemy weapons systematically destroying everything in their path, but the human ships moved like smoke, always one step ahead of the bombardment. "They're firing blind," Cleo observed, her voice filled with professional admiration for their enemy's power, even as she calculated how to defeat it. "Raw firepower, but no finesse. They're like a hammer trying to catch butterflies." "A hammer that can crack planets," Parker reminded her. "Don't underestimate them." As if to emphasize his point, a Skrath heavy cruiser's main cannon vaporized an asteroid the size of a city block. The energy beam continued past the destroyed rock, barely missing a human frigate that had been sheltering behind it. "Close one," the frigate's captain reported, adjusting position. Parker watched the tactical display as his ships maneuvered through the increasingly chaotic battlefield. The Skrath were powerful, but they were also predictable. Their tactics were based on overwhelming firepower and rigid formation fighting, concepts that worked well against conventional enemies but struggled against the fluid, adaptive approach the humans had developed. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "I'm detecting some kind of coded transmission from the Skrath fleet. It's on a frequency that's barely within our detection range." Parker's eyes narrowed. "Can you decode it?" "Working on it," Cleo replied, her fingers flying over the controls. "It's strange. The encryption is sophisticated, but it's not standard Skrath protocol." The main screen flickered as she worked, displaying fragments of the intercepted transmission. The code was complex, but gradually patterns began to emerge. "Got it," Cleo said, her voice tense with concentration. "It's a status report. The Skrath are reporting to someone else, someone who's been giving them detailed intelligence about our colony." Parker felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's environmental systems. "What kind of intelligence?" "Population numbers, resource assessments, defensive capabilities." Cleo's voice trailed off as she processed more of the intercepted data. "Parker, whoever hired the Skrath knew about our mining operations, our transport schedules, even our population density. This isn't a random raid." "Someone sold us out," Parker said quietly, his hand instinctively moving to his ring. "Someone in the Concord." The implications hit him like a physical blow. The Galactic Concord's dismissal of humanity hadn't been simple arrogance. It had been orchestrated. Someone wanted Earth's colonies eliminated, and they had used the Skrath as their weapon. "Keep monitoring that frequency," Parker ordered. "I want to know everything about who's pulling the strings." The battle in the asteroid field continued, but now it had taken on a different character. The Skrath were growing frustrated with their inability to pin down the human fleet, and their attacks were becoming more erratic. Energy beams sliced through the void at random, destroying debris and creating new hazards, but the human ships remained elusive. "They're overheating their weapons," Cleo reported. All that random firing is pushing their systems to the limits. Parker saw the opportunity. All ships prepare for Phase 2. Wait for my signal. The human fleet had been slowly encircling the Skrath forces, using the asteroid field as cover. Now, with the enemy's weapons overheating and their formation disrupted by frustration, it was time to reveal the trap. Signal from the Retribution, the tactical officer reported. They're in position for the northern approach. Star Vengeance reports ready from the southern vector, added the communications officer. One by one, the human ships reported their readiness. The 1,000-vessel fleet had become a net, and the Skrath were swimming directly into it. Now, Parker said quietly, the asteroid field came alive with human warships. They emerged from behind rocks, rose from debris clouds, and materialized from sensor shadows with predatory grace. The Skrath, caught in the middle of reloading their overheated weapons, found themselves surrounded by an enemy that had turned their own battlefield against them. By the void, the Skrath commander's voice crackled through the comm. How many ships do they have? More than you counted on, Parker replied as the Defiance emerged from behind a massive asteroid, its weapons already locked onto the Skrath flagship. This is what happens when you underestimate humanity. The human fleet opened fire simultaneously, but their weapons were different from the crude energy beams the Skrath had been using. These were precision instruments, adapted from salvaged alien technology and improved by human ingenuity. Plasma bursts that curved around obstacles, energy lances that could penetrate multiple targets, and exotic weapons that the Skrath had never seen before. Cleo, what's our damage assessment? Parker asked, as the first wave of human fire reached the enemy fleet. Significant hits on their forward vessels, she reported, her voice filled with satisfaction. Their shields are adapted for energy weapons, but some of our modifications are confusing their defensive systems. The Skrath fleet, caught off guard by the sudden reversal, struggled to respond. Their rigid formation, designed for conventional battle lines, was a liability in the three-dimensional maze of the asteroid field. Ships collided with debris as they tried to maneuver, and their return fire was largely ineffective against the mobile human vessels. They're trying to reform, the tactical officer observed. The heavy cruisers are moving to establish a defensive perimeter. Parker nodded. Let them. The longer they stay in the field, the more opportunities we have. But even as he spoke, he was processing the implications of the intercepted transmission. The Skrath were mercenaries, hired by someone in the Concord to eliminate the human colony. This wasn't just a raid, it was a conspiracy. Parker, Cleo's voice carried a note of urgency. I'm detecting massive energy readings from the Skrath flagship. They're powering up something big. The main screen focused on the enemy command vessel. The ship was easily 3 times the size of the Defiance, its hull bristling with weapons that could crack open small moons. But now, sections of that hull were sliding open to reveal something that made Parker's blood run cold. Planet Cracker, he breathed. They brought a planet cracker. The weapon was massive, taking up nearly a quarter of the ship's hull. It was designed to focus stellar energy into a beam that could literally crack a planet's crust, turning entire worlds into rubble. Against a single human colony, it was overkill beyond measure. Why would they bring something like that? Cleo asked, her voice tight with concern. Parker's mind raced through the possibilities. Because they're not just here to destroy the colony, they're here to make sure there's no evidence left behind. The intercepted transmission suddenly made more sense. Whoever had hired the Skrath didn't just want the humans dead. They wanted all trace of the colony eliminated. A planet cracker would turn the entire world into an asteroid field, erasing any evidence of the conspiracy. All ships' emergency maneuvers, Parker broadcast to the fleet. The Skrath are preparing to fire a planet cracker. We need to stop them before they can target the colony. The human fleet responded with the fluid grace that had become their trademark. Ships that had been scattered throughout the asteroid field suddenly converged on the Skrath flagship, their weapons focusing on the massive vessel's vulnerable charging systems. This is it, Parker said to his bridge crew. Everything we've built, everything we've fought for, comes down to the next few minutes. The void between the fleets became a storm of energy as the human ships pressed their attack. The Skrath, realizing the threat to their ultimate weapon, abandoned their attempts at conventional tactics and focused everything on protecting their flagship. "Cleo, can we penetrate their shields?" Parker asked. "Working on it," she replied, her hands flying over the controls. "Their defensive systems are adapting to our weapons, but I think I can find a frequency that will resonate with their shield generators." The battle raged around them as the human fleet fought desperately to prevent the deployment of the planet cracker. In the distance, Parker could see the colony's lights, where families were sheltering in the reinforced bunkers, trusting that their defenders would keep them safe. The intercepted transmission had changed everything. This wasn't just a battle for survival, it was the opening move in a war that would determine humanity's place in the galaxy. And the enemy wasn't just the Skrath. It was someone in the Concord itself. The planet cracker's charging sequence bathed the asteroid field in an ominous crimson glow. The Skrath flagship, Ravager's Pride, had oriented itself toward the human colony, its massive weapon array humming with enough energy to crack a world in half. Parker watched from the bridge of the Defiance as his fleet pressed their desperate attack against the enemy vessel's shields. "Cleo, we need those shields down now," he said, his voice tight with controlled urgency. "I'm trying," she replied, her fingers dancing over controls that sparked with overloaded circuits. "Their defensive matrix is adapting faster than I anticipated. It's like they've seen our weapons before." The comment struck Parker as odd. The human fleet's weapons were unique, cobbled together from salvaged alien technology and modified beyond recognition. How could the Skrath have prepared for them? "Parker, incoming transmission," the communications officer called out. "It's from the Skrath flagship, but it's not on their standard military frequency." "Put it through," Parker ordered. Instead of the harsh buzzing of the Skrath commander, a different voice emerged from the speakers. It was smooth, melodic, and unmistakably from the Galactic Concord. "Skrath Commander, status report. The weapon should have been deployed by now." Parker felt his blood turn to ice. He gestured frantically to the communications officer, who quickly began tracing the signal's origin. The Skrath commander's response was filled with frustration. "The humans have more ships than intelligence indicated. They are interfering with the charging sequence." The Concord voice, now tinged with irritation, cut in. "Interference is unacceptable. You were given clear instructions. Eliminate the colony and all evidence. Do not fail." "We will not fail, benefactor," the Skrath commander buzzed, though a hint of desperation crept into their tone. "But these humans, they are unlike anything we have encountered." Parker cut the transmission, his jaw clenched. "Benefactor?" he growled, the word a bitter taste in his mouth. "So it's not just a rogue element. Someone high up in the Concord wants us gone, and they're calling the shots directly." Cleo's voice, usually so calm and analytical, was now laced with fury. "The signal is bouncing through a series of Concord relays, but I've got a preliminary trace. It's coming from the inner systems near the Concord's capital world." "Of course it is," Parker muttered, his mind racing. "They want to eliminate us, then sweep it under the rug. No messy diplomatic incidents, no questions about why a primitive species suddenly developed 1,000 warships." The Ravager's Pride continued its ominous charging, the crimson glow intensifying. The human fleet, despite their ingenuity, was struggling against the sheer power of the Skrath flagship's shields. The planet cracker was nearly at full charge. "Parker, we're not going to break through in time," Cleo shouted, her voice strained. "Their shields are too strong." Parker's eyes scanned the tactical display, searching for any weakness, any angle. His gaze fell on the asteroid field, still a chaotic maelstrom of rock and debris. An idea, reckless and desperate, sparked in his mind. "All ships, focus fire on the asteroids directly in front of the Ravager's Pride," he barked into the comm. "Create a direct line of sight to their weapon array." Confusion rippled through the fleet, but they obeyed. Instead of targeting the flagship's shields, the human warships unleashed a torrent of fire on the massive rocks that shielded the Ravager's Pride's front. Plasma bursts, energy lances, and exotic projectiles tore through the asteroids, pulverizing them into smaller fragments and creating a temporary, unstable tunnel through the debris field. "What are you doing, Parker?" Cleo cried, her voice incredulous. "We're wasting precious time." "We're not wasting time, Cleo," Parker said, a grim smile touching his lips. "We're creating an opening. Computer, prepare a full-power, single-shot burst from the Defiance's main cannon. Target the planet cracker's primary energy conduit." The Defiance surged forward, its adaptive hull shifting to a streamlined assault configuration. The ship plunged into the newly created tunnel, dodging fragments of exploding rock as it raced towards the Ravager's Pride. "Parker, that's suicide," the tactical officer yelled. "You'll be a sitting duck." "Sometimes you have to risk everything," Parker replied, his eyes fixed on the target. "Cleo, give me everything you've got. Overload the capacitors if you have to." "You got it, boss," Cleo said, her voice grimly determined. "Charging main cannon, 90%, 95, 100. The Defiance's main cannon, a monstrous weapon cobbled together from a dozen different alien designs, glowed with an incandescent blue light. Parker locked the targeting system onto the exposed energy conduit of the planet cracker, a thin line of vulnerability on the massive weapon. "Fire!" Parker roared. A beam of pure concentrated energy lanced out from the Defiance, tearing through the void. It struck the Ravager's Pride's planet cracker with pinpoint accuracy, piercing the conduit. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a ripple of explosive energy spread across the massive weapon, followed by a chain reaction of detonations. The Ravager's Pride shuddered violently as internal explosions tore through its hull. The crimson glow of the planet cracker flickered, then died, replaced by a cascade of sparks and smoke. The massive weapon, crippled and unstable, began to glow with a dangerous, erratic energy. "They've lost control of the planet cracker," Cleo shouted, her voice filled with triumph. "It's going critical!" The Skrath commander's voice, now a panicked shriek, blared over the comm. "Retreat! All ships, retreat! The weapon is unstable!" The Skrath fleet, already disorganized and demoralized, broke formation and fled, their wedge-shaped vessels scattering into the void. The Ravager's Pride, a dying Leviathan, drifted helplessly, its internal explosions growing more violent. "Parker, get out of there," Cleo urged. "It's going to blow." Parker didn't need to be told twice. He slammed his hand on the controls, and the Defiance spun around, its engines screaming as it accelerated away from the doomed flagship. They cleared the asteroid field just as the Ravager's Pride erupted in a blinding flash of light, its destruction sending a shock wave that rippled through the void. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the hum of the Defiance's engines and the excited chatter of the bridge crew. The human fleet, battered but victorious, regrouped around their command vessel. "We did it," the tactical officer whispered, his voice filled with awe. "We actually did it." Parker leaned back in his chair, a wave of exhaustion washing over him. "We won the battle," he corrected, rubbing his ring, "but the war has just begun." Days later, the Galactic Concord Central Assembly was in an uproar. News of the Skrath defeat and the destruction of the Ravager's Pride had spread like wildfire. The Skrath commander, humiliated and furious, had returned to the Concord to demand retribution. But their account of 1,000 human warships had been met with skepticism and outright disbelief. "This is preposterous," the envoy declared, their skin a furious crimson. "The Skrath commander claims the humans, a primitive species, annihilated their fleet. With 1,000 warships, it defies all logic." The Skrath commander, their chitinous armor scorched and their mandibles clicking in agitation, slammed a clawed fist on the assembly floor. "They are not primitive. They are monsters. They used our own wreckage against us. They built a fleet from scrap and fought with tactics we could not comprehend." A ripple of nervous chatter went through the assembly. Some representatives scoffed, but others, particularly those from systems bordering the Skrath territories, looked uneasy. The Skrath were brutal, but they were not known for exaggeration. Suddenly, the holographic chamber flickered. A new image materialized in the center of the assembly, overriding the Concord's secure network. It was Parker, standing on the bridge of the Defiance, his face grim and unyielding. Behind him, the tactical display showed the coordinates of the human colony and the wreckage of the Ravager's Pride still smoldering in the void. Greetings, representatives of the Galactic Concord. Parker's voice boomed through the chamber, carrying a cold, undeniable authority. My name is Parker, and I am the commander of Earth's colonial defense fleet. A gasp went through the assembly. The envoy's skin shifted from crimson to a sickly pale green. You dare to hack into our secure channels, the envoy stammered. We dare to defend ourselves, Parker replied, his eyes sweeping over the stunned faces of the representatives. For 3 cycles, you ignored our diplomatic overtures. You dismissed us as irrelevant. You allowed a mercenary species, the Skrath, to be hired by one of your own to eradicate our colony and erase all evidence of our existence. He paused, letting his words sink in. We intercepted your communications. We know who ordered this attack, and we know why. You feared us. You feared what we might become, and so you tried to eliminate us before we could even begin. The Skrath commander, seeing their opportunity, pointed a claw at the envoy. It was the benefactor. They ordered the attack. They provided the intelligence. The envoy recoiled, their skin turning a mottled purple. Lie! Slander! Is it? Parker's image zoomed in on the Skrath commander. Commander, confirm the identity of your benefactor. The Skrath commander hesitated, then, with a guttural click of their mandibles, spoke. It was Senator Xylos of the Eldari Collective. A collective gasp echoed through the chamber. Senator Xylos was a revered figure, a long-serving member of the Concord's High Council, known for his calm demeanor and unwavering commitment to galactic peace. The accusation was unthinkable. Senator Xylos has always been a proponent of controlled expansion, Parker continued, his voice cutting through the stunned silence. He saw humanity as an uncontrolled variable, a threat to his carefully constructed order. He believed we were too unpredictable, too adaptable. He gestured behind him, and the display shifted to show images of the human fleet. The patchwork hulls, the reconfigurable weapons, the sheer diversity of their designs. He was right to be afraid. We are unpredictable, we are adaptable, and we will not be controlled. This is an outrage, the envoy finally managed to say, finding their voice. You have no proof. We have the Skrath commander's testimony, Parker countered. We have the intercepted transmissions, and we have the wreckage of the Ravager's Pride, a vessel equipped with a planet cracker, a weapon designed for planetary annihilation, not mere conquest. Why would the Skrath bring such a weapon to eliminate a primitive colony unless they were ordered to leave no trace? The logic was undeniable. The assembly buzzed with renewed chatter, this time laced with fear and suspicion. We demand an investigation, a representative from a reptilian species hissed. If Senator Xylos is involved, this threatens the very foundation of the Concord. An investigation will reveal the truth, Parker said, his gaze fixed on the envoy. But understand this, Earth is no longer a non-participatory species. We are here. We are a part of this galaxy, and we will defend our right to exist. He paused, then delivered his final, chilling message. We missed your meetings because we were busy building our future. Now you will attend ours. We will be sending our own diplomatic envoy to the Concord within the next cycle. They will present our terms for cooperation and our demands for justice. And if those terms are not met, then the galaxy will learn what happens when humanity is pushed too far. With that, Parker's image vanished, leaving behind a stunned silence in the Central Assembly. The envoy stood frozen, their skin a pale, trembling white. The Skrath commander, having delivered their incriminating testimony, now looked almost relieved. Weeks later, the Defiance sliced through the void, leading a small diplomatic convoy towards the heart of the Galactic Concord. On board, Parker stood beside Cleo, watching the stars streak past the viewport. The initial shock of the Skrath defeat had sent tremors throughout the galaxy, and the revelation of Senatus's conspiracy had plunged the Concord into an unprecedented crisis. Senator Xylos had been arrested, his assets frozen, and an emergency tribunal convened. The evidence Parker had presented, combined with the Skrath commander's coerced but undeniable testimony, had been overwhelming. The Eldari Collective, humiliated by their senator's actions, had publicly disavowed him and offered reparations to Earth. Think they'll listen to us this time? Cleo asked, a hint of amusement in her voice. Parker smiled grimly. They'll listen. Fear is a powerful motivator, and right now they're terrified of what we might do. The human diplomatic envoy was a carefully selected team: former military strategists, brilliant engineers, and a few charismatic individuals who could navigate the treacherous waters of galactic politics. At their head was a newly appointed ambassador, a woman named Dr. Eris Thorne, a former xenolinguist who possessed both sharp intellect and an iron will. As they approached the Concord's capital world, a massive artificial sphere teeming with life and advanced technology, a fleet of Concord warships emerged to escort them. Their formations were respectful, almost deferential, a stark contrast to the dismissive arrogance of before. "They're rolling out the red carpet," Cleo observed. "Guess 1,000 warships will do that." "It's not just the ships, Cleo," Parker said, his gaze fixed on the approaching capital world. "It's the message. We showed them that humanity, when underestimated, is capable of anything. We showed them that we are not to be trifled with." The Defiance docked in a massive, ornate hangar bay, its patchwork hull looking almost out of place amidst the sleek, polished vessels of the Concord. As the ramp lowered, Dr. Thorne stepped out, flanked by a contingent of human security personnel. Parker and Cleo remained on board, their presence a silent reminder of the power that backed Earth's demands. The envoy, looking considerably older and more subdued, awaited them. Beside him stood representatives from several other major Concord species, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "Welcome, Ambassador Thorne," the envoy said, his voice lacking its usual melodic confidence. We are eager to hear your proposals." Dr. Thorne offered a polite but firm nod. "I imagine you are. Let us be clear, envoy. Earth seeks not conquest but recognition. We demand a seat on the Central Assembly with full voting rights. We demand access to galactic trade routes and technologies without prejudice, and we demand justice for those who conspired against us." The envoy flinched but did not argue. The Eldari Collective had already begun to face the consequences of Senator Xylos's actions, and the Concord itself was reeling from the internal betrayal. Over the next few cycles, negotiations were tense but ultimately fruitful. Earth's demands were met one by one. The Concord, desperate to avoid further conflict with a species that had proven itself terrifyingly capable, conceded to almost every point. Humanity gained a seat on the Central Assembly, their unique perspective and unconventional thinking often challenging the long-established norms of galactic politics. Parker, however, chose to remain with the fleet, overseeing the expansion of Earth's defense forces and the establishment of new, secure colonies. He became the quiet guardian of humanity's burgeoning presence in the galaxy, a legend whispered among the stars. Cleo, his indispensable partner, continued to innovate, pushing the boundaries of human-alien technology, ensuring that Earth's fleet remained at the cutting edge. The Skrath, having learned a brutal lesson, largely avoided human space, though a grudging respect began to grow between the two species. They understood strength, and humanity had displayed it in abundance. The Galactic Concord, shaken to its core, began a slow, painful process of reform. The incident with Earth forced them to confront their own arrogance and complacency, leading to a more inclusive and less dismissive approach to emerging species. Years passed. The human colony on the outer rim flourished, no longer hidden, but a vibrant hub of activity. Children born there grew up knowing that their home was safe, protected by a fleet that had once been dismissed as impossible. Parker, now an old man, stood on a balcony overlooking the bustling colony, the familiar weight of his ring a comfort on his finger. The stars above were no longer just distant lights. They were pathways to a future humanity was now free to explore. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Earth may have missed every meeting, but when it finally showed up, it changed everything. And the universe, for the first time, truly knew what humanity was capable of. The quiet frontier world, once a hidden sanctuary, had become the launching pad for humanity's true destiny among the stars.